What's going on, guys? In this video we're going to be working with the Twitter real-time streaming API, so we can get tweets in real time and we can base them off of certain rules, which are basically like queries. So if you want tweets with a certain keyword or hashtag, if you want tweets that are retweets, or if they have images, basically you can add up to, it says right here, up to 25 rules. And the way we add rules is by making requests to a specific endpoint to add and delete the rules. And then we have another endpoint to actually get the tweets. And like I said, it's a real-time stream, so you can do what you want with them. You could save them to a file, you could save them to a database. What we're going to do is get the tweets and pipe them to a front end using socket.io. So we'll basically have a web page that'll show the tweets coming in real time. All right, so we're going to start off just creating a node.js server. We're going to use a package called Needle to make our request to the Twitter API and set and delete our rules if we want, and then get the tweets, and then we'll go ahead and implement socket.io. All right, so this is the documentation page. I'll put this in the description if I remember. And if we go to Quick Start here, you'll see the rules are going to look something like this. This is pretty simple, and we're going to keep it simple with the rules. This will get all the tweets that contain both the keyword cat and have images. And you can also add tags if you want. And then to set the rule, you would make a request, a post request to this endpoint here, stream/rules, and you would add your rules like this. So you have a property called add, which is an array that has the value and then an optional tag. And you can have up to 25 rules. Now you do have to have an access token, or a bearer token I should say. So you have to go to developer.twitter.com, and from here you're either going to see developer portal here or apply. If you see apply, just click it, go through the, I think it's like 2 pages of just some simple questions, what you're doing with the project and so on, and then you should get approved right away. You don't have to wait. You just get an email and then you should have access to this dashboard here. All right, so from here you want to create a project. So you can see I already have a project called Traversy Media, and if I click on that I can add apps here, and you can actually create multiple apps per project. So I'm going to go ahead and say add app, and this has to be something unique. I'm just going to say tweet, we'll say tweet dash stream dash Traversy Media. So this has to be something unique. And then once you create your app, you're going to see an API key, a secret key, and a bearer token. This bearer token is what we need when we send our requests. We have to send it within the authorization part of the header. All right, now we could just take this and put it into an environment variable on our machine, which is what I'm going to do, but you can also make a request to the OAuth endpoint that Twitter has with your API key and secret, and it will return the same token. All right, so we're going to take the easy route and just put this into an environment variable. So let's jump into VS Code, and I just have an empty folder called tweet stream. I have my integrated terminal open down here, and the first thing we want to do is create a package.json. So let's npm init -y so we don't have to answer the questions, and that will generate a package.json. Now as far as dependencies that we're going to install, we want to install express, socket.io, Needle, which is the HTTP client that we're going to use to get our tweets and set our rules, and then also .env to set our environment variables. So we'll install those. I'm also going to install nodemon as a dev dependency. I don't know if we'll actually need it, but we'll install it anyway. So -D for dev dependency, nodemon. That way we don't have to keep restarting our server every time we make a change, if needed. So now let's just add a couple scripts. So a start script, which will run our main file. So this is going to run node, and then in a folder called server we'll have an index.js file. And then we'll copy that down. So this one will run nodemon, and we'll call this one dev. Okay, so those are our 2 scripts. Let's close that up. Let's create a new folder called server, and then let's create a file inside server called index.js, not .j, .js. And then I'm also going to create in the root here a file called .env. Now in the .env I'm going to put my, what's this? Get rid of that. In the .env I'm going to put my bearer token. So let's call this Twitter underscore bearer underscore token, and we're going to set that equal to this right here. So I'm going to copy that and paste that in and save, and then we can close that up. All right, so in our index.js, basically I want to just work with the API first. I want to be able to set and get and delete rules. And then I also want to be able to obviously get the real-time stream and then just log them in the console. Then we'll go on to socket.io and showing them in a web page. So let's bring in Needle, because that is the HTTP client that we're going to use to make our request. So we're going to require that. And then to use our environment variables, we need to set config to require.env. And then we just need to tack on to this config. And then we should be able to get our token. And I'm going to actually put that in a local variable called token. And we can get it from process.env, which we use to access our environment variables. And then Twitter underscore bearer underscore token. And then I'm just going to console log token just to make sure that we can get that, because we need to send that with every request. So let's run npm start. And now it's showing our token. Good. Now I'm going to create a couple variables for the endpoints or the URLs. So rules stream URL, and we can get this from the docs API reference. So this is going to be the endpoint for rules. I'm going to grab that, and then we're going to put that in here and just add on to the beginning here HTTP, and then it's api.twitter.com. Now the stream URL is going to be just this, so without the /rules. Paste that in. Now by default our tweets are going to be, it's just going to be the ID and the text. If you want to add more onto that, you can. For instance, we can do a query here, so question mark, and we can add on tweet dot fields, and we can say public underscore metrics, so that'll give us like the retweets and likes and stuff like that. Now if you want the author info, you have to use an expansion, and I'll just show you this in the docs real quick. So if we search for fields, so fields, and right here tweet fields, user fields, public metrics, which is what we just added. So you get the ID and text by default, and then we added public metrics, and if you click on this expansions right here, you can get more data. So if we set the expansion to author ID, we can get the user object representing the tweet's author, which is what I want. And there's a lot of things you can get. I mean, images, different types of media, pretty much anything. So you can look at more into that if you want, but we're going to keep it simple. So let's add on to this an ampersand, and then let's say expansions equals author underscore ID, and that again, that should give us a user object with the author info. All right, so those are our URLs. Now I'm going to create an array called rules to hold the rules that we want to add, and they're basically just objects with a value. And I'm going to keep this simple and just do keywords. So let's say giveaway. All right, and you can add flags like is retweet. So you would get just retweets. You could do has images, stuff like that. But we're going to keep this really simple, and you can add more as well, which I'll show you in a few minutes. But we're just going to look for tweets that have the keyword giveaway and get a stream of them. Now we need 3 separate functions for our rules. We need one to get the rules, we need one to set rules, and one to delete rules. All right, and I just noticed I have HTTP. This needs to be HTTPS for both of these, so make sure you have that. Now our first function is to, let's say, get stream rules, which we don't have any set yet, but we'll at least be able to make the request and get a response. So for this, it's going to be async, because when we make our request with Needle, it's going to return a promise. So let's say async function get rules, and we're going to create a response variable here, and we want to await Needle. Now the way Needle works, let me just show you the docs real quick. So you can do like needle.get.post put delete and pass the URL in, and then use a callback. And this isn't going to use a promise. If you want it to be promise based, then instead of doing .get or put or delete, you just do needle and then pass the method in as the first argument. That's going to return a promise, which you can use .then or you can use async await. So that's what we're going to do, is this format here for this particular request. So just needle, and then it's going to be get to the rules URL, and then we have to add an options object here with headers because we need to send our token. So that's going to be in the authorization part of the header here, and it's a bearer token, so we just want to put backticks and put the word bearer space and then the token. All right, so that it's as simple as that to make the request and get the response, and then we just want to, from this, return the response.body. And for now, I'm also going to console log it just so we can see it. So response.body, and then to call it, ultimately we're going to be using socket.io, where we can do, io.on connection, and then we can run our code, but we're not using socket.io yet. So I'm just going to use an iffy, which is a function that'll run itself, and we're going to make this async and just use an arrow function. So this is going to run automatically, and from here let's go ahead and initialize a variable called current rules, and then I'm going to open up a try catch here, and in the try we're going to set the current rules equal to await get rules, because remember, get rules returns a promise, so we want to use await there. And then here we'll just do a console error of the error, and we'll quit the process. So process.exit with failure, so we'll pass in a 1 here. All right, so this should actually just make the request and get us the rules, although there's not going to be any yet, but it'll give us the response. So let's run npm start. And you can see what we get back is just an object with meta with sent that has the date and time. There's no actual rules yet, so now let's create a function to set them. And it's going to be very similar to this, so I'll just copy this function here and paste that in, and let's say set stream rules and set rules. So response, again, we're going to return a promise, but we don't want this to be get, we want it to be a post request since we're setting the rules. If we're setting them or deleting them, it's going to be a post request. Now we do need data, so let's say const data, and the way this needs to be formatted is add and then the array of rules, which we have above. Now this data that we have here, we pass in after the endpoint, after the rules URL, we're just going to pass in data like that. And since we're sending data in the headers, we're also going to add the content dash type of the data, which is going to be application/JSON. Okay, and then here we don't have to console log the response here, we just want to return it. And then down here I'm going to call, so before we get the rules, let's go ahead and await set rules. Okay, so it's just going to set the rules based on the array that's at the top. So I'll run npm start, and now in addition to meta, you can see data, which is an array, and notice that it got assigned an ID. So any rules that you add, they're actually going to get assigned an ID automatically. Okay, so now we can get and set, but we also want to be able to delete, because I'll show you if you want to change this or you want to add to it, like let's say we want to add, let's say value Xbox. So if I run this, it's going to set and get. So now you can see we have both these objects, giveaway and Xbox. But let's say I decide to delete this and go back to just giveaway. If I run this again, you'll see it's still showing Xbox. It's still set as a rule. So we want to basically wipe it clean before we set them. So let's go down here. We'll actually just copy the set. And let's go ahead and paste that in and say delete stream rules. We'll call this delete rules, and this is going to get passed in the current rules. So we'll pass in rules, and we want to make sure that rules.data is an array. So let's say if not, and then we can use array.isArray and pass in rules.data. So we're saying here if it's not an array, then let's just return null from this function. All right, now as far as the data that we're sending, instead of add, it's going to be delete, and instead of rules, it's going to be an object with IDs that's going to be an array of IDs. So we have to extract just the IDs from these objects from rules.data. So to do that, we'll create a variable called IDs, and we'll set that to rules.data, which looks like this, an array of IDs and values, and we'll use map to basically manipulate that array and say for each rule we want to return an array of just rule.id. Okay, so that'll give us the IDs, pass it in here, we're passing the data here, and none of this needs to be changed. And then down at the bottom here, I actually want to get the rules first, so I'm going to switch spots here, put set rules at the bottom, and then here we're going to await delete rules, and we want to pass in the current rules. Okay, so basically let me just comment this. So this will get, we'll say get all stream rules, and this will wipe it clean, so delete all stream rules, and then this will set rules based on the array above, the rules array. Okay, so now if when I run this, we do the console log at this stage of in get rules, so we're going to see Xbox at first, but then it'll delete and set it to whatever we have up at the top here, which is just giveaway. So let's go ahead and run it. So the first time we run it, we will see Xbox, because again, that's when we're logging it. And then if I run it again, we won't see it because it's been deleted. Okay, so we just have giveaway. And if I add something here or change it, it's going to set it to that automatically. All right, so now we have all of our rule stuff set, and I don't want to console log the rules anymore, so I'm going to get rid of this. And now we can start to get our stream of tweets. So I'm going to go under the last function, which is delete rules, which is right here. And let's say function, we'll call this stream tweets. And we need to make a request to the stream URL. I'm not going to call this response, I'm going to call it stream, because that's what we get. And then we can use needle.get, we don't need a promise here. And then pass in our stream URL, and then our headers with authorization and bearer, and then our token. Okay, so that will give us a stream that we can then call events on. So we'll say stream.onData, and then have a function here that's going to give us the data. And let's add a try catch. Now this data is going to be a buffer, so we need to parse that to JSON. So let's do const JSON equals, and then JSON.parse, and we want to run that data through there. And then for now, we'll just console log JSON. So every time we get a tweet streaming, it's going to log in the console. And we want to leave this catch empty, because that will just basically keep the connection open, even if there's no tweets. So let's save that, and then down at the bottom here under the try catch inside the iffy, we're going to go ahead and stream tweets, and we should be good. So I'm going to make this bigger so we can see what's going on here. And let's see, that didn't work. Huh. Stream tweets. Stream URL. I'm thinking that I messed something up in the URL. So Twitter, we have, yeah. So this should be tweet fields. So if you screw something up here in the query parameters, it's not going to work. So tweet.fields equals public metrics, and then expansions, make sure it's plural, author ID. So if nothing happens, just double check your URL. So I'm going to save this now, and let's run this again. And there we go. So now we're getting just a ton of tweets because we're using giveaway, which is a popular keyword, and it's just constantly streaming these tweets. And you can do whatever you want with these, save them to a file, whatever. If we want to slow it down, we can change the rule here. Let's do we'll do coding and stop and start this again. And now it will be a little slower. And you can see now we're getting, you can see the hashtag 100 days of code. And notice the data we're getting, the text. So we get the tweet text, we get the ID, we get the public metrics, the author ID, and we have this includes here that has a users object where we can get the users, the Twitter username. So yeah, we're just getting coding tweets. And I mean, there's a lot of possibilities that you can do with this by streaming tweets of whatever type you want, whatever rules you want. But I'm going to go ahead and stop this now. And now that we can at least get real-time tweets, I want to now put them in a web page. So we're going to implement socket.io. So we are going to change this up a bit. If you want to just copy this and put it in a separate file so you have it, so you can just log them, maybe you want to do that. But now we're going to bring in a couple more things up here. So let's say const, we want to bring in the HTTP package. And I'm not going to explain too much about socket.io. It allows us to use WebSockets. Basically, it's a open door connection between our server and our client. Your client could be anything. We're just going to use vanilla JavaScript in an HTML file, but it could be React, your React build folder, Vue, Angular, whatever. So we want HTTP. We also want path and express. You don't really need to use Express, but I'm just making it easier to load the page. And then socket.io, of course. So let's say const socket.io require socket.io. All right, and I believe that's it. And let's create a port because we're going to be listening on a port. And we'll set that to process.env.port, or let's do 3000. And then right above where we set the rules URL, let's initialize Express. And then for the way that we can use sockets is we create a server with HTTP dot create server. We can pass in our Express app, and then for socket.io we'll create a variable and set that to socket.io, and then here we'll pass in our server. Now we want to listen on our server, so let's go down to the bottom, and I'm going to just comment out this iffy that runs right away because this stuff is going to go in io.onConnection. So we'll comment that out, and we'll say server.listen on port, and then we'll have an arrow function and just do a console log and say listening on port. All right, so if I save this, I should just see listening on 3000. Good. We'll go ahead and stop it. And now, let's see, we want to, I'm going to go down right above where we had the iffy here, and let's take our IO and say .on connection. So when the client connects, this will run. So on connection, let's just console log and say client connected. All right, now before we go any further here, I'm just gonna create our client, which is going to be just an index.html file, and then connect to our server. So let's create a new folder called client. Again, this could be React, it could be whatever you want. And this is, whoops, client and file index HTML. All right, and then we'll just go ahead and let's say real-time tweet stream, I guess. And for now, we'll just do h1 hello. And I just want to load. I want to be able to load this when we go to localhost 3000 in the browser. So what we can do is back in our server. Let's go. Let's see, where do we want to put this? We'll go right here and say app.get. So this is basically why we're using Express. So request response. And when we hit this route, we want to load the index.html that's in the client. So we'll say res.sendFile because we want to load this file. And we're going to use the path module and then resolve. So we basically just are pointing to this file right here. So path resolve _dir name, which will give us the current folder, which is server. So from there, we want to go .. which will bring us out to the root. And then from there, we want to go into client. And then from there, we want to load index.html. So if I save this and I run the server, actually, I'm going to do npm run dev, which will run nodemon. And then if we go to our browser and I go to HTTP localhost 3000, now it's loading my HTML page. Okay, so this is our client. Now in the index.html, let's go ahead and let's implement socket.io. So I'm going to, how do I want to do this? Let's get it from cdnjs.com. So if we search for socket.io and copy the script tag, and then let's go back to our HTML page, and right above the ending body tag, I'm going to paste that CDN in, which is just the socket.io library. And then let's create our own script tag. And inside here, we're going to say const socket equals IO. And then we should be able to take socket and say .on connect. So here, when we connect, let's do a console log, and let's say connected to server. Okay, and this is going to display in Chrome in the console because this is our client. So if we go back to our page, where did I do it? Oh, right here. So if I go back here and I open up console and I reload, we're going to see connected to server. And if we go to the back end here, we'll see client connected. Now instead of, so down here we had our iffy that runs, you know, to get and set our rules and stream our tweets. Instead of using that, we're going to put everything in this connection, this io.on connection. So I'm going to grab everything in that function, not the function itself, but everything inside of it up to the stream tweets. I'm going to grab that. We can delete this, and let's paste that in the io.on connection, and let's uncomment all of this. All right, now it's going to crash. That's fine. And what we want to do is, where we have stream tweets, we're going to pass in IO and then go up to stream tweets, and we're going to say socket. And then instead of just console logging the data, let's comment that out, and we'll say socket dot emit, and we're going to emit an event called tweet. And this is how we can communicate back and forth. I can send an event to the client, and I can pass data along, which the data is going to be the JSON. It's going to be the tweets. So let's go ahead and save that. And let's see, await is only valid in async functions. Okay, so this, yeah, this actually has to be asynchronous because we're using await here. All right, so save that. Good. Now, if we go back to the index.html, which is our client, we can, let's go right here and let's say socket dot on, and we want to listen for tweet, right? So tweet, and then we can get the data, which we'll also call tweet. And for now, let's just do a console log of tweet. All right, so if we go back here and I reload, we should start to see. Oh, I just saw. There we go. So we have coding as our rule, so we're not getting, a flood of them like with giveaway. But if we take a look, you can see the data. You can see the ID, the text. We have the public metrics. We have the includes with users. And it's an array, but just with one element with the ID, the name, username. So we have access to all this data, and we can put it into the DOM. And again, you could do this, it could be React or any framework, but I didn't want to make this too complicated. So now that we're able to get that stuff, let's put it on the page and let's make it look decent. So I'm actually going to grab Bootstrap. Oops. Let's say getbootstrap.com, get started. I'm going to just grab the CDN here. And let's put this right here. I'm also going to grab Font Awesome so I can use the Twitter icon, which I'm going to get from CDN.js. So Font Awesome. And we're going to copy the link tag and put that right here. All right. Now, as far as the markup goes, I'm just going to put like a simple nav bar, no links or anything, but just to make it look halfway decent. So here in the body, let's put a nav class of navbar, and let's say navbar dash dark class and bg dash dark. All right, and then in here we'll just do a container class and the a tag with navbar brand. And for the title, for the heading here, we'll just say real-time tweet stream. I mean, you can put whatever you want. And then under the nav, we'll just have a container. And we need basically a placeholder for our tweets. So I'll give this an ID of tweet stream. All right, so if I save that and I go back and reload, you can see we have our nav bar. We're still getting the data coming in. Now to display it on the page, we're going to write a little bit of JavaScript here. So first of all, let's bring in our tweet stream element, document.getElementById tweet stream, because that's where we want it to output. And then I'm going to create an array for our tweets, just initialize it like that. Excuse me. And then when we get our tweets is where we want to do everything. So let's get rid of the console log. I mean, you can keep it if you want. Actually, let's just comment it out. And then let's create a variable called tweet data and set that to an object and just get the data that I want, which is the ID, which we can get from tweet.data.id. And then for the text, we can get that from tweet.data.text. Now I also want the username. So if you remember from the data, I know we're not logging it anymore, but it was in includes.users, which is an array, and then the user data was in the first element of the array. So we can get this, and I'm actually going to tack on an @ symbol here. So let's do @, and then from tweet, we want includes.users. We want the first element in the array, and I want the username. All right, so that's just the data that we want to display, put into an object. And then let's create a new element to insert. So we'll call this tweet L, and let's set that to document.createElement. and we're going to create a div. I'm actually going to stop this server while I'm doing this. So we're going to create a div, and I'm going to use a card, a bootstrap card. So let's do tweet element, so which is our div, and set the class name. So I want to add two classes here. One is card, and then I want margin my-4, which is just margin on the top and bottom. All right, and then we'll take our tweet element and let's set the inner HTML, and that's where we want to put, you know, our output. So from here, inside the card class, we're going to have a div with the class of not body, card body. And then within there, let's make sure we close that. All right, so within card body, let's do an h5, and I'm going to give this a class of card-title. And inside here is where I want to display the tweet text. So we can say tweet data.text. Okay, because we're getting that from here. So every tweet we get, we're setting this object, and then we have access to that data. And then we're going to output it here. So under that, let's do an h6, and I'm going to give this a class of, let's say, card-subtitle. And let's also do margin bottom, so MB2. And let's do text muted, which will make it a little lighter. And then inside here, we're going to put the username. So tweet data dot username. All right, so we have that. Now I also want a button that will link, or a link that will go to the tweet, because you might want to actually go to Twitter and see that tweet. So let's put an A tag here with a class of btn primary and margin top 3. And then for the href, it's going to be https twitter.com. And the way that Twitter URLs are formatted is it has the username, so we can pass that in here with tweet data.username. And then it's going to be /status, and then / the tweet ID, which we can get from tweet data.id. All right, and then for the text here, inside the A tag, let's put a font awesome icon. So class, I almost wrote class name. So class is going to be FAB and FA-Twitter. Yeah, so we'll put that. And then the text for this, we'll just say go to tweet. All right, so that's pretty much it for the output. Now we have to add it to the DOM, so let's go under where we have the HTML, and let's take our tweet stream element that we brought in from the DOM, the ID, and we want to append child and just pass in our tweet element. All right, so I'm going to save that, and now let's go ahead and run this. We'll just run npm start. And let's go to our page and reload. Close that up. Okay, so we're getting the tweet. It looks a little weird though. I'm not sure what I did. I think I might have forgot to close a tag. Yeah, my H6, I put a div. So make sure we fix that. All right, and then still doesn't look right. So we have H5. Oh, I kept putting divs. H5. Just make sure this is okay. So that should be good now. So we'll reload and just wait for a coding tweet. There we go. And of course, again, you can put any rules you want. If I change my rule here, where is it? If I change this back to giveaway and restart this and go and reload the page, they're going to fly down once this starts. Yep, there they go. All right, so this is just going to constantly, you can see the scroll bar keeps going up. They're just going really fast. And you can, of course, go to the tweet. You might want to change the target so it opens in a new tab. But yeah, let's put it back to coding. So every time I change this, and every time it runs, it's going to delete, it's going to get the rules, delete them, and reset it to whatever is here. All right, and then if you want to, for some reason, get rid of some of the tweets, like delete them after a specific amount of time, you could add like a set timeout. So if I do set timeout and pass in a function and take our tweet element and remove from the DOM after a certain amount of time, we'll do 5 seconds, but it'd probably be more than that because that doesn't give you enough time to read it. But if we go back and reload, so this Dr. Andrea, whatever, that should go away. Yep, see, it goes away in 5 seconds. So you would probably set that to something higher. And I'm just going to comment that out. All right, but that's pretty much it. We're able to stream any kind of filtered tweets that we want for whatever reason. We put it on a web page, but you could do whatever you want with them. But that's it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this little project. I'll have all the code in the GitHub repo in the description, and thanks for watching.